part of the lesson, we'll look at the testing and the amendment of the soil first in land preparation. Before you make your beds and before you actually put the plants which will come from your nurseries, specified nurseries, the first thing you do is to test and to amend your soils if you, after testing, you find that the soils are not fit for the type of crops that you want to do. So in land preparation, as we saw yesterday on the when we read under identification of soils, we identified the best type of soil that covers almost all the whole range of spices, from the ones that are good in sandy soils to the ones that are good in a bit of a bit of a clay soil. So from what we defined, or what we found out about the soil yesterday, which is loam soil, is that it has to have the nutrient levels and fertility levels have to be in a good range to feed the plants. So in land preparation, first you have to test your soils. You test for your soils for the pH range and the nutrient range, which for most herbs, the pH range is in between 6 to 7 pH, equally as the nutrient levels are in the average range. For those who don't know, the range for pH is from 1 to 14. For every other crop, it's like the range is like a ruler, so it's 1 to 14. For most plants, they range, almost every plant ranges from there. There are those which are acidic and those with that are alkaline. The acidic plants range from 7 going up to 14 pH, and those that are acidic range from 1 to 7. So on the testing of and the amendment of soil, the first point that you have to take into consideration is to find a good place where to start up your garden. So in whichever place, whether it's in your yard, you have to find a good place where you can put these herbs and spices. And most herbs require at least a sunlight of direct sunlight of 6 to 8 hours. Sorry. So meaning you need a sunny spot, a spot where the herbs will be getting enough sunlight. So in your fields, that is the best spot you need. You have to look for a place where you know that you will be getting an average of 6 to 8 hours of sunlight on a daily basis. That is the first step you need to do. Then on the second step that needs to be done on the testing and amendment is to test the drainage of your soil. As we talked in the first place, that when we were yesterday, when we were talking about soils, how clay soil is not the best soil, as it's not porous. It doesn't take in water as quick as it's supposed to take in. So you find you put a lot of water, by the time the required water reaches the bottom, you would have flooded the top, which would cause when we learn later on, you will learn about diseases and pesticides. You will learn about how soggy places create fungi. So when we look at sandy soil as well, we talked about how it it is extremely porous. When you pour water, the water goes through. It goes through down to the bottom. And most herbs, the soil system of most herbs isn't as of large trees, so they do not go that deep in the bottom of the soil. So when you are preparing your land, you would have to test the drainage of the soil itself. And to test the drainage of the soil, you would have to dig at least a hole which is at least 30 centimeters deep. 30 centimeters deep of a hole, and about 30 centimeters wide. And in this hole that you have dug, you need to pour water and fill it to the brim. It fills to the top. In it, put a measuring stick or measuring or whatever measuring rulers that you have. Put them in, put it in there, and be checking every hour to see the measurement that it is at after every hour. And the ideal soil drain has to drain about 2 inches, which is 5.1 or 5.2 centimeters per hour. So every hour you check, at least the water that has to have been drained from the stick that you have put in there, it will have to show at least in the range of you must have lost at least 5 centimeters or 5.1 or 5.2 centimeters of water in the hour that you checked. So every hour you keep on checking until the water goes. That way, if it is showing 5 point something centimeters per hour, that means you have the perfect drainage in your soils. Then the step number 3 in the preparation of the soils is the enriching of the soil to improve the drainage. That is, if you have after checking that your soil is not draining according to the way it's supposed to drain, which is in between 5 centimeters to 5.2 centimeters per hour. What you have to do is to mix in organic matter to enrich soil, to improve the drainage and the retention. As we know, organic matter sucks up water and keeps moisture. If you organic matter, for example, when we look at compost, composted leaves, composted grass, they store moisture for longer periods than any other soil types. So we introduce these to the soil so that we can improve, we can enrich the soil so that we can improve the retention of moisture, which will be feeding the plants itself. And the third step in the preparation of the land itself is first you have the fourth step is you have to test the pH range. As I had said earlier on, the pH range of the soil determines what type of plant you can plant in that type of soil. There are plants which thrive in an acidic range, which is the range from 1 to 7. Hopefully you had taken note when I said the whole ruler for pH, the whole meter for pH is from 1 to 14. So the best range for acidic plants is 1 to 7. And then the plants which are alkaline is 7 to 14. Now, if you look at the top, what we are dealing in, these herbs fall in a range of vegetables, and most vegetables and herbs, they fall in a range between 6 and 7. So the pH range of 6 and 7. So before you plant, you might not know that your soil is in a range where it is maybe 12 to 14, which is really alkaline. And you go ahead and plant those plants. At the end of the day, your plants won't grow well. They'll die even before they mature. So you have to test your soil. So to test your soil, you look for a testing kit. You need to have a testing kit, which in most agro stores, they sell these pH testing kits. And if you can't buy them, if you can't find one, I think even I think Onza, they do testing of soil. You can take your soils there. They do test for you. As you can see in the images that are showing there, those two are the two types of pH testers. As you are going to buy your pH tester, you should make sure you find the one which comes with a nutrient tester as well. If you can't find one which comes both with the nutrient tester, you can buy them separately. After you have tested the pH of the soil, then you have found out the range that is there of the soil. We'll go to the fifth step. In case you have found that the reading on your pH tester is low. When the reading on the pH tester is low, you would have to raise the reading. So how do you amend the soil to raise the reading so that it is not low? To raise the reading of the soil, you would have to introduce agricultural lime or dolomite, as these are one of the best organic in organic matters in organic farming as we do. These are the best you can use to raise your pH. So agricultural lime or dolomite is commonly found in every agro store that I've seen. I'm sure every place near every farming areas, the agro stores, you'll find the agricultural lime and dolomite, which will help with bringing up the pH reading to the range of between 6 and 7 on your pH tester. Now, in the case that maybe when you did your testing, you find that the soil itself composition has a pH that is really high. Again, if the pH is not in the range of 6 and 7 and it's really high, you would need to amend that soil so that you can bring the pH down to the level that it is required to be. And to bring the pH level down, and the sixth point of amending the soil, you would have to introduce decomposed compost. A well decomposed compost helps to reduce or to lower the pH of garden soil over time. It's not like a miracle thing that you just put in an hour later, it's perfect. No, it takes time because it's amendment. It takes time. So over time, as you are amending that soil, the pH will be dropping to the levels that you need it to drop to. And then on the seventh step of amending and land preparation, the seventh step is to check the nutrient levels in the soil. If you remember yesterday when we were talking about the types of soil. We looked at sandy soil, which has the low nutrient levels, and we looked at clay, and we looked at silt, and then we looked at loam soil, which is one of the best soils, as it is a composition of all the other types of soils, and the nutrient fertility in it and the nutrient levels is at least at a range that is accepted. So you'd need to check for the nutrient levels in your soil. How do we check the nutrient levels in the soil? The best way that you can check the nutrients levels in your soil is by using a nutrient tester. As I was saying earlier on in point 4 about buying a pH tester, there are pH tester kits that come together with a nutrient tester. If you can find that in your nearest agro store in your area, will be the best you would need to buy for you to be testing your soil. As a farmer, it is very important to have a pH tester and a nutrient tester, because that will tell you the environment in which you are planting your plants and which type of crops you need to plant in which area on the farm. So when you buy the nutrient tester, you would have to test the nutrient levels so that you can have the perfect nutrient level that is required in your soil. So after the 8th point, after you test your soil and you find the soil has no nutrients in it, or it has a low supply of nutrients in it. If it has a low supply of nutrient in it, you would now have to introduce fertilizers to the soil so that you can replenish the nutrients that the soil doesn't have. And when we come to fertilizers, you are looking at organic fertilizers. In the case as H&M, Spice and Herbs only buy organic herbs and spices. But for those of you who are growing in your backyard, well, if you want to take a risk with synthetic, which I do not advise, healthy plants are plants which are grown organically. Their flavors are even much better than the synthetic ones. So in order to replenish your nutrients in the soil, you apply fertilizers. When it comes to fertilizers, which tomorrow will be covering fertilization and irrigation, planting and propagation. So that on the fertilizers, how to use them, when to apply them, will be taught tomorrow. So I pray all of you will be there tomorrow to hear on that part, as it is a key part in the replenish nutrients in your soil. And after you have done that, you have checked your pH, so the way the soil drains, and you have checked the nutrients, the availability of nutrients in your soil, and all these are in line, and you have found that the draining of the soil is good, the pH is good, the nutrients is good. Now the next step in land preparation is tilling the soil and preparing the beds. So after you have tested and you know that my soil is good, you have to till it. So the steps of tilling the soil is, the first step is to moisten the soil. So if you moisten the soil, do not, when you're watering it, do not overwater it and it becomes muddy. Because when it becomes muddy, it will be a bit tedious and how do I put it? When you want to prepare the soil, it will become drained. You don't want to drench the soil to become muddy when you're tilling it. You just moisten it so that when tilling it, it will be easier on the next step where you have to loosen the soil. When it becomes muddy, it's kind of tedious and hard to loosen the soil. So the first thing is to water the area that you are about to till, and then till it. Use the appropriate tillers that you want to use. And the depth of tilling, at least you have to do a minimum of 30 to 46 centimeters of soil. So when you loosen the 30 to the 46 or to 50 centimeters of the soil, that will be the second step which you do, is loosening it after you till it. After you loosen it, you have to rake it together and make beds. And these beds that you have to make have to be at a certain height, because you want to have, like we said in the preparation of land, you'd need to have a proper draining of water in your soil. The proper draining has already been explained. So the beds have to be raised to a height of 20 to 30, in between 20 to 30 centimeters high. That's how high your beds have to be raised. The width of every bed will be determined by which plant of crop you are planting and what type of irrigation you are going to be using. But the best, according to the plants that we have listed, the width of the beds at least have to be 15 to 23 centimeters wide. The length is up to you. If you want to do 5 kilometers in length, go ahead. If you want to do 2 kilometers, it depends on the manpower that you have and the systems that you'll be using for irrigation themselves. But for those who are doing in pots, you can do one plant in every pot. With there's a chart when we come to propagation, which comes to show the spacing in between the plants themselves. So after you prepare the beds, now comes the point where you plant the herbs that you have prepared. If it's thyme, if it's turmeric, if it's basil, whichever plant that you have chosen to plant in it. So that is the first thing you have to know. So before I move on, at least let me hear one or two people. I do not want people to have fallen asleep by this time. I might have been talking to myself. If there is one or two questions, I know the questions and answers are in the afternoon, but I'll just give about a minute or two, one or two questions. Just I hear from you.
Madam K, is it Case Panje? You can begin with your question, and then we have 5 days senior course to go ahead. So, Madam K, you can begin with your question. Okay. Okay, Madam, 5 days. You can begin, and
Oh,
then
okay.
that's fine.
It's just about the nutrients level. I didn't get the number, or how do you know the nutrients level in the soil?
Okay, the nutrient levels Like I said, the nutrient levels are tested with a testing kit itself. There's a testing kit which is used to test the nutrient levels. And the plant itself, if there is that much nutrients in the soil, the plant itself will get accordingly to how much nutrient it needs. So the only thing you need to test is if the soil itself has enough nutrients for the plant to grow. And different plants on that is on pH. Most plants are in a range of pH 6 to 7. So for nutrients, there is no specific chart, but the testing kit itself comes with an instruction which, depending on the testing kit for nutrients, which has a bar. If it's green, no, the nutrient levels are low. If it's orange and if it's this color, it has a range in which it shows. So when you test and it shows the nutrients in the soil are low, meaning you have to replenish nutrients in the soil until the kit, when you test, it shows that the nutrient levels in the soil have reached the required nutrient levels for plants to grow.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moses. Good morning, everyone, by the way. Sorry, I was a little bit late. I'm still having network challenges. It's raining in the morning every day for us here, so network is a little bit crazy. Um, Kay, your hand is still up though. Are you able to come in and ask your question, or can I give it to Musana? Is it? Kay? Okay, Musanda, please come through and ask your question.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. So for me, it's just it's a revelation, I think, to hear that loamy, or rather compost, reduces the pH in soil, meaning that it converts the soil to be more acidic. So I don't know. I'm trying to understand if compost is good for the plant. Um, does that mean okay, if compost, I don't know, let me try to bring my query out properly. So if compost, which from my general understanding is a good thing for plants because it's high in nutrients and everything, if a compost is going to reduce the acidity of the plant, does it mean that at some point the acidity will go down so much if you're using compost, so you have to meter, or you have to measure the amount of compost that you are going to put in your soil? That is in relation, of course, to organic farming. I don't know if my question has come out properly.
Oh, yes. No, yes, I understand the question, and it's actually a good question.
Okay. Thank
Yes, compost itself is most compost, almost every compost is acidic. So if your soil is the pH is high, meaning the pH is in the acidic range, we add compost. And when you add compost, you have to test your soil so that the range stays in the 6 to 7 range. Too much compost also is not good for the plant itself. So even the compost itself has to be tested when it's added to the soil, when you've mixed to the soil. That's why so when you add the compost to drop the pH from alkaline to acidic, you have to test again before you plant. You test the soil, you see in which range that you are in. So I can't say a specific amount of compost that you need to add, but what you need to do is get a kit. At least when you add the compost, you test.
All right.
So that if the pH range again has gone low to too acidic, you bring in dolomite, which is alkaline, will raise the pH until you reach to the level that is required.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Um, I don't see any other hands. Kay, are you able to send me a message? If you're not, I've seen your hand is up, but you're not able to come through and ask your question. So maybe send a message on the same group or on the same platform, and then we'll be able to address your question. Um, Mr. Moses, I think we can continue with the lesson.
Okay, so now that we have prepared our soil and we have done our beds, we come to mulching. Mulching is an important it's an important action, I can say, lack of a better term. So it's an important action to do when it comes to farming. Almost every other plant that I know of, mulch is introduced to the soil. The mulch helps in keeping the moisture and protecting the rooting system as it stays on top. So it regulates the amount of heat that goes into the soil, and at the same time regulates the amount of moisture that stays in the soil. I know earlier on we talked about introducing compost to loam soil so that it can to your soil so that it can bring retention of moisture. But at the same time, the same thing happens with compost. As we look at the list, that there are a lot of things that can be used as compost, that can be introduced to your gardens as your beds or your pots as compost. But because of the range which is there is very long, I selected 5 types of compost, which to me are the best type of compost. And looking at how easy you can acquire them and the financial cost to the types of compost that are there, the best I could come up and find are these 5. And these 5, the first one is yard waste. When we look at yard waste, we look at the grass we cut in the yard, the leaves, at times even organic matter that has no synthetic materials in it from the kitchen. Well, which means the vegetables maybe you bought at the store in the kitchen, those the excess that you're throwing away, that comes to become the yard waste. Number 2 is compost, and we know what compost is. Most farmers know what compost is, uh, which is made from mostly, as I said, yard waste and leaves and other organic matter. And the third one we have is wood chips. Wood chips for those in the in city, it's not easy to come by, but the those who live near sawmills, they'll definitely come across wood chips easily. But there are those who if you have enough money, you can buy your own wood chipper and just put it in your yard, and to be throwing in some wood to get wood chips for mulching your gardens. And there is straw and hay. Straw is found in every farm, on every farm that I've been to. Straw grows in the side of your beds. It grows if there's a stream that passes through near the water. There's always straw. that can be used as well as a mulch. And then we have number 5, which is gravel. Gravel, I have come across 2, 3, or 4 people who found it to be amazing and kind of weird, because they don't picture gravel itself to be used as a mulch. Most people don't think gravel can be used as a mulch or can be introduced to plants as a mulch. And the importance you will come to hear more when I start explaining about the 5 themselves. So the yard waste that we have looked at, I've explained a little bit about the yard waste, or I won't go on that one. Wood chips and compost, so straw and hay, and then gravel. So mulch, the importance of mulch to your soil is to kind of regulate the temperatures. So it's an insulator to the temperatures. If your temperatures are extremely high in your region or in the season itself, and the plant, the only part of the plant that requires that sunlight is the top and not the rooting, because if the heat in the soil is too much, the water will evaporate. So the mulch itself becomes an insulator of the heat. So the heat hits the part where the grass is, and the heat is reduced as it reaches the soil, as it gets to the roots. So the roots will get the amount of temperature that is needed. If you think of periods like winter, in June when it's really cold, this also comes to work as a regulator. When I was looking at gravel, we have plants like rosemary, these shrubs that are woody. These require a certain amount of high heat introduced to their rooting system. Not high, sorry, but a certain amount of heat that to introduce to their rooting system. So the best mulch that you could find for plants like rosemary is gravel. When you add gravel on top of as a mulch itself, and at the bottom you have your loamy soil, which has good levels of nutrients, and the pH is okay, and then you add your gravel on top. So the gravel actually stores the heat that comes from the sun and then passes it on to the roots. So this is where the gravel becomes important to plants like rosemary and those that are in the same class as it. So those are the importance of mulch to your soil. And mulch, as well as you have noticed, compost is used to decomposted compost is used to balance the pH of your soil. So the mulch itself, as it stays with the waterings or the rains that come as time goes by, it becomes it becomes a fertilizer as well at the same time. So in the long run, it becomes beneficial to the soil as well as adding nutrients to the soil. Wood chips is looked at, and we find wood chips to be the best mulch that you can come up with, that you can introduce to your gardens. Wood chips are the best mulch that you can find. And there is one type of mulch. I use it as mulch, and I use it as manure as well. Is rabbit droppings. Why I didn't add this one to the list is the availability of rabbit droppings is not that high, so not every other farmer is going to come across them unless you have rabbits and you have rabbits at large range for you to cut. Let's, for example, you are doing a hectare or 2 hectares of land, you would need to have a lot of rabbits on your farm, or to have a source where they have a lot of rabbits. So that's why I didn't add it on the list. But to me, it's the best type of mulch and manure that can be used in a garden. One is because as it is manure, it's not as hot as chicken droppings or as cow droppings, but it has a good level of nutrients that are required. And because it's not that hot, and the droppings themselves do not release the nutrients at a high rate, it can be used as mulch, and in the long run it keeps on feeding your soil with nutrients. And because the stomach system of the rabbits is more like of an elephant, the things they eat do not stay for long periods in their stomach. So the grass they eat, which is used to compost, is like they are a living composter. They eat, it comes out as compost at the end. And at the same time, since it becomes the grass is chipped or the leaves are chipped, it becomes a mulch on its own at the same time. So for mulches, I think we've covered mulches. If there will be any questions, we'll hear later on. So we move on to nursery management. So now that you have learned how to prepare your gardens and to introduce mulch to it, and the nutrient levels, the pH levels, now that you have a good understanding of how to handle your herb farming in these fields, you need now to understand how to grow it from a seed or a seedling or whatever the type of propagation, which you will cover on propagation. For now, all you hear is the necessary management of it. The propagation will be taught to you tomorrow, as it is what comes after the necessary management. So you need to know the requirement, why a nursery is needed, what is needed in a nursery, about a nursery management itself, and the advantages. You need to know the advantages of nursery management. So what is a nursery? What is nursery management? So like the definition in itself, it's defined as a sum of activities performed for successful production, marketing of different plant materials, and for care itself, and different necessary sections. Uh, what you need to know about necessary management is like I said, the requirement of of necessary. What is a requirement of a necessary? You young plants. If we look at young plants of now the word itself necessary, if you look at it even in a human natural state, is a necessary is where the beginning is. So the necessary in everything, like we take children to nurseries, that's where you build their foundation. So to build the foundation of the plant, what is required? You require to have the best environment for them. Same applies with the plants. The requirements of the nursery. Why do you need a nursery? You need a nursery because these plants are small, they're fragile, they're delicate. So they have to be protected. They have to be protected from extreme weathers, whether it's extreme heat that affects them, extreme rainfalls, so meaning the water that is being fed to them has to be regulated by you. We look at droughts themselves. There are periods like we have been having in Zambia, like this period, there are areas which have low levels of rainfall. So you have your nursery out and you're waiting for the rains to be watering it, and there is no rains at all. So the regulation can be done for the young ones in a nursery. You look at control of germination of the pests and disease. It's easier to control these if you do your young ones in a nursery. So, and plants that are germinated from a nursery, the germination is better than plants that are grown directly in a field. So when you have a nursery, the germination of the young plants is better and it's faster than planting it directly in your fields. And again, you get to have a control of your rotation, if you of the planting rotation, where in a garden you would have 10,000 or so seedlings, depending on the type of farming that you are doing. You have 10,000 seedlings in trays or in beds. You can transfer them to the portion that has been prepared and grow them. While these are growing, you have more which are coming, so that you have enough. You do not have a gap in between your cells. If you are growing them for business, you do not have a gap in your cells where you have a plant in the field, and then by the time you've removed, you have to prepare it again, that waiting period, and then planting. So it cuts down on the time that you will require to plant more. And even as you do, if it's a crop rotation type of arrangement, you will have ample time. You will not waste that much time, I can say, basically. So we also come now to see the management itself. Nursery management itself. What is the purpose of nursery management? As we have said, we have looked at the requirements and the about nursery. Now we look at nursery management, which the purpose is it's the phases, I mean, of nursery management. That's what I was supposed to say, not purpose, but the phases of the nursery management itself. There are phases that you need to know in nursery management. So the phases in nursery management, the first one is planning, the second one is implementation, and the third one is monitoring and evaluation. These three are the phases which are found in nursery management. So on planning, when you look at on planning, is you have to plan for the demand of for planting material. So you look at how much demand is there for the material that you are looking at. So the herb itself that you are looking at, the demand itself that is required on your in your fields, you have to plan from the nursery. The provision of mother blocks, the requirement of land area, water supply, working tools, growing structure, and input availability. You have to plan in advance before you start the nursery itself, plus the farming itself. These things have to be taken into consideration. So the required land that is required for the nursery, you have to at least plan for that. The supply, the water supply that is required for the nursery, and what type of materials will be planted there. If there's a need for a mother blocks, if there's requirement for mother blocks, you would have to plan for that. If if you have to look at it, you would need working tools. You won't use your bare hands to actually dig, or if you're digging and for sowing and other things, you would require certain tools. So these have to be taken into consideration when you are planning as well. And the second point comes in implementation. So the land treatment, protection against biotic interferences and soil erosion, proper layout, input supply. That this comes into implementation. You have to implement the land treatment that is required to be done, as we were talking in the first part of preparing the land itself. So this is what comes in as land treatment as well. The pH, the nutrient levels have to be done. That's the implementation that needs to be done in the nursery. Those tips that we had looked at in the first part. So the protection against biotic interferences. Since we were looking at these are young, so they are prone to. It will be easier for them to die if interferences come in. Soil erosion, where you put your nursery, implementation has to be done so that they do not. The nursery is not put in a place where the soil can be eroded. That happens on an open field because erosion does happen on an open field from time to time, depending on the area itself. So come to monitoring and evaluation, which with the physical presence, rapid response, critical analysis, incentive to workers, such things will come in necessary management. You will have to have physical presence. Meaning, since these are young ones need attention. Meaning, you cannot plant and say, okay, I'll come next week to come and check on them. No, you plant and check on them morning, evening, even if you're watering once a day or twice a day, depending on which type of plant, you would still to be checking. At least morning you check, you do what is required to be done. Then in the evening, you just come, you pass through, you check. Maybe some bugs are coming to visit your nursery or not. But there needs to be a physical presence there where you need to always take care of them. These are young ones. They're like babies in the house. You cannot just leave the baby in the house and go. No, since there's bread in the house, there's what and what and what, there's food in the fridge, and the baby will eat on its own. No. So it's the same thing with plants themselves. You have to constantly check the young ones. Rapid response comes in because your physical presence, you are monitoring, you're evaluating, you're looking, okay, at this stage, this is 3 days, it's doing well, it's not having any issues. This is 4 days. If there is, in a case where you have bugs have entered, if it's a greenhouse that you are using for a nursery, you have pests that have come in, locusts have come in, there will be rapid response. If you are monitoring every now and then, if you're evaluating them, you will know, okay, my younglings have acquired a certain fungal. So there'll be rapid response, because the if you have noticed one has, you will deal with it before it spreads to the others easily, in a confined space, in a allocated space, which is easier to manage. Critical analysis as well comes to happen in the monitoring and evaluation of itself, because can easily you are there every now and then, you're evaluating every now and then. So the analysis itself, you will know, because you know your plants, you know how they need to grow, you know how they need to look at a certain age, how they need to look, if they have enough nutrients or not, as they are small. Incentive to workers, you know these things come in. Workers sometimes become negligent if they are not given incentives when it comes to working. For those of you who've got big farms where you have to hire in maybe 10 to 15 or 5 and above workers to handle the farm, these people will need an incentive, something to get them to at least manage your nurseries in a proper manner. So these are the things that are required in nursery management. These are the phases that are done in nursery management. We would have to look at what are the advantages of the nursery management itself. When we look at nursery management, it's possible to provide favorable growth conditions. If you had looked at the first few points that I talked, the germination germination is as well in growth. It does good in germination. So it is possible to provide a good condition of growth. Better care of young ones, as I'm just from saying, when we were looking at monitoring and planning and implementation, there is better care of younger plants, as it is easy to look after a nursery in a small area against pathogenic infection or pests or weeds and these things. So, and crops grown in a nursery is is when it comes to price, it's economically more profitable, because if it's grown in a nursery and you've grown enough and you've gotten enough for your field, you have excess. You have excess seedlings. Those can be sold on the market or to your neighboring farmers who require the same type of herb or spice that you have in your nursery. So it's as good as a win-win. You have gotten enough plants to get in the nursery, you have excess ones, you can sell them and make a bit of profit out of it. And for those who grow nurseries just for business itself, it's profitable for you to raise in a nursery, as a nursery germination doesn't take long as compared to growing them directly in the field. And the saving of land itself, because there are certain which are advised to grow them in trays. You save up a lot of land because you have these trays in a corner in your field which has a, if you have a greenhouse or you have mother blocks there and like a shelter chalet, something that you are using to shelter these from heavy rains and the like, you have this set up that helps even in crop rotation, even like I had said earlier on in crop rotation, because you have them growing in your nursery while these are growing to move to the next. You have these are coming out, these are coming in. There's not much of a period of waiting in between. And I think for nursery management, this is where we come to the end of our lesson on land preparation and nursery management. So I'll take in a few questions and answers will be given, just a few. Some will be done in the evening after you go through the whole document. After you go through the whole document, which is on our portal, and after you do go through later on in the in the evening, we'll have the questions and answers period and the recap period. But as for now, I'd love to hear if there is one or two or three questions that people are having from what I was talking.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Moses, for teaching us on land preparation. Like Mr. Moses has said, he can take one or two questions. Is there anybody that has questions, clarifications that they would like to ask? I'll just ask for a show of hands. Okay, your hand is still up, by the way. I still haven't received a message. I don't know if you can now come through and ask your question, or you showing your hand is actually by mistake. Is there anybody who would like to ask any questions? A hand I haven't seen. Oh, we're good for today. Or rather, maybe let me say we're good for now.
Hello.
Hi, Patricia, is it?
Yes. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for that lovely presentation. It was really good, thought-provoking. So my question is, in case you want to do very big hectarage, for those that are really into commercial farming, I'm just wondering how workable it is, with the use of mulch, where to get that huge amount. I mean, not mulch, but the compost, the stuff you use for land prep. Where do you get it from if you have more than a hectare, for example? I'm thinking that if you have a smaller piece of land and if you're also planting in pots, probably that would be easier. I stand to be corrected, but I'm just wondering how feasible it is and how you can be able to get a huge amount of compost for use if you have a very huge space. And then also the other thing I just wanted to know, I didn't hear anything unless if I missed it. On how best you can use, or if it is even advisable to use the chicken manure, the manures that we know from cows, etc., etc. I know the presenter talked about the harshness of chicken manure, for example, that it can burn stuff. So I don't know what your advice is, because I know a lot of people are using these things. So for the product, for growing our herbs, is it advisable to use those? Thank you.
Okay. Yes, that is a good question itself. So I don't know which one to start from answering. So I'll go ahead and start with the latter first. The the chicken manure, in the cow dungs, all these come under fertilization and yeah, feeding and fertilization of the crop. So since today we
Okay.
were not covering that, that's why I didn't actually talk about it more. I know I talked about rabbit droppings, but the rabbit
Yes.
droppings I talked about them in an aspect of mulching itself.
All right.
I didn't want to look at it in the feeding and fertilization part, which if I
Mhm.
had to do it today, it would cut down on the lesson for tomorrow. So that's why I didn't touch that part. And the other question for land preparation on a larger scale, it's actually feasible to amend soils to a level that is required. It's not like every inch has to be fed directly with wood chips. No, that's why we had put five because there are more than five types of mulch that you can use in the types of farming. So I picked on that because we looked at the people that we have been having even on the WhatsApp that want to take part of the lessons. I had to weigh it from those who are just growing for ornamental, those who are growing just in the backyard, and I have to put in the commercial and the extremely commercial, if there's a term like that. But yes, it is feasible, depending with your budget. Because for the commercial ones, they have a certain budget, which means there's a possibility for them to actually acquire lands which they just use to grow hay, which is used as mulch, or to just grow straw, which is used as mulch. And as we know, straw easily grows. So within a space of a month, straw can be even cut 2 times or 3 times. So it depends with your budget and the type of farming itself. So it's feasible.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other question from anybody else? Anybody else that needs any clarifications? I know we do not have any messages. I've checked the inbox. I haven't received any messages or any questions in the message. Um, are we good? Everybody's fine. I can make the executive decision that we're all right, and we'll wait for when we go through the document that will be on the portal, and then we'll ask questions later on in the afternoon when we have the recap. Is that fine with everyone?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, perfect. All right, it means today we'll end a whole lot earlier. Our session is supposed to go the way up to 8. But I think we're all right. We're good. So thank you so much, Mr. Moses, um, for that presentation and for helping us learn about land preparation. So we'll have to go through the document. Please, everyone, let's go through the document on the portal. Let's go through the materials. It will help you understand a whole lot, a lot of things, and also pick up some of the things that you may have missed as well. So please, let's go through the document. Let's also answer the questions that are on the portal as well, and um, and then we can also come and ask questions later on in the afternoon or the evening. The evening session is at 18 to 19. It's just 1 hour. So it's 18 to 19, and you can ask all of your questions. Otherwise, thank you so much for everyone that everyone that was here that came through for this session. Have an amazing day. Goodbye for now.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
It's been fun. Hey there, buddy. It's just me again. Came into my mind last night. So I'm just checking in.